How about now? Excellent. Let's start again. So let's pretend, let's do this. Hey, welcome aboard. It's Third Rail Thursday. I'm your technically inept host, Denny. Great start to the evening, and I am working on the layout from a different perspective tonight. So I have been focusing on some passenger platforms for the last couple of weeks, and that is just off camera over here. And it means that I've been going back and forth a little bit looking at Aldershot, which is the platforms that I'm modeling. And I've been taking a more critical look at the yards and the track work around that area. And I decided that I want to make a slight modification to my very small yard up here. And basically I just want to add one runaround track. I had one length of track in stock. I had one leftover switch, and I thought, you know what, tonight is the night, I'm just going to add it in there. And so over the course of the next hour or so, all operations have been shut down on the main line. The maintenance away crew is out, and we are going to do our best to only disrupt service for an hour, cut out and install a new piece of track so that I have a new runaround. And I want to talk a little bit about the rationale for this, even though it's just a small rationale. Before I do that though, I should probably say hello to a number of people in the chat. And so I think that the day that I scheduled this, this stream, I think Floyd leapt in immediately. And so I think Floyd gets the cookie. And I had a couple false starts here. So I feel like, or Brian got it. But anyway, good evening to Brian and Floyd, M&M Rails, James at Dundas Junction Model Railroad, Trackside Mike, keep it on the track, Mikey. I Run Games and Trains, good evening. I can see that you've been really active tonight. You guys are having a great chat. Curly Express is here. Let me see, BN Ironwood, good evening to you, Steve. John Garvin. On the mainline trains, good evening to you, sir. And Maxorus 9, RDK, Scott Rails, good evening, John Garvin, and I think, oh, Kraus Rails, good evening, Timmy's Miniatures. This list goes on and on. Anyway, good evening to all of you. So, as I was saying, I'm going to add a little piece of track, and that's because I have been looking at this passenger station, and I'm going to go and take a look at some slides for a couple minutes and just talk about things that I didn't realize, even though I have visited this passenger station quite a bit. And this is a picture of some of the passenger platforms at Aldershot. And you can see to the middle right, there is 2 GO Transit trains parked in there. And then to the left of the passenger platform that you can see there, there is an empty track. And these are the 3 principal platforms that are used on a regular basis when you go to the station. And you can see there is a ton of freight operations going on to the left-hand side of this. And so here's an aerial view of the area. And so you can see the white area, those as both the top of the passenger platforms as well as the GO trains. And this is all the operations that, you know, I'm sort of focused on, but you can see there's a lot more built into that area. And if you pull out a little bit and move a little bit east, there is a huge classification yard just to the side of the Aldershot station, where there are trains running very constantly, and actually it's a very depressed area. It's about 3 feet below the grade of the main line. And here's another view. And so one of the interesting things that happens when you go to this station is that you are parking down in where you can see that parking lot. You make your way into the station, and then you descend underground and come up on the passenger platforms. Because that marshalling yard is a bit below grade, when you arrive at the parking lot and walk towards the station, you don't see that there is at least 5 or 6 tracks for CN that you're coming up upon. They're a little bit below grade. You can see the passenger equipment, and you go in and you enter the station, and then you come up on the platforms, and you really aren't aware of the fact that there is all of this other work going on. And so really, Aldershot Station looks like a bit of a tack-on to an actual marshalling yard. And maybe you can see there on the left-hand side that you can see that there's below grades as a retaining wall there. And these are the passenger platforms that I have been working on trying to model. And so I have been working on some early prototypes with my laser cutter. And here is one of the first examples of that. There is an elevator shaft here, there is an escalator here, and then overhead canopies. And so this is about twice the width of that, and then there are other sections that are added on. And I covered off these a bit on the last live stream. I was working on painting the concrete, and they are just being installed, or will be installed, just beyond the camera. So why does that mean that I'm working in this area over here? Well, what that's about is that the 3rd passenger platform for GO Transit originally was stub-ended. It just stopped like that, and then they recently made a big announcement where they ran it around, and I want to duplicate that by finishing off the runaround track here. It also means that I do have a passing track for some of the freight operations, because what I'm realizing is that I'm going to run my passenger trains all the time, but eventually or occasionally sneaky freight gets out onto the main line and disrupts everything, as CN is wont to do. And so I want to be able to move it around the layout and then park it here. And I also like the idea that the passenger platforms will be hidden behind, you know, a great big grimy graffiti covered train. So I like that. And so what I have done ahead of time here is that in this area, I actually knocked down some of the foam contours here. And I have one of these rasps, use it for a lot for drywall. And this is amazing for hogging off a lot of material. And so I just ran that down here until I had a level patch. I went in with some liquid nails, and I installed this length of roadbed in here and pinned it down overnight. And everything's now installed and really well secured. So I can knock the pins out like that. And then the other thing that I did in preparation for tonight is I took the remaining number 8 that I have, and I added an insulating joiner, and I actually soldered the other rail so that I can install this. Most of the track here, none of the track here is glued down. It's all tacked down, and that comes from my previous experience where I had real challenges with expansion And it's paid off because, you know, I did have some water in the basement last month, and the humidity went through the roof in this room. It's all been dried out, but definitely I could see the expansion and contraction of the layout, and having not nailed the track or glued the track down made a lot of difference. And I would effectively say saved a lot of it. I have soldered the outside rail here, and it's important that the outside rail has the gaps in the flex track so that tonight I can sort of bend it and put it into shape, and it doesn't compress and it doesn't necessarily warp away. So what I'm going to be doing is figuring out where this goes. I'm going to operate on the main line here. I'm going to cut that piece of track out and then install this. Good evening to Sean Pennywise and Miser Railroad. Good evening. Anyone else that I've missed in the meantime? Oh, good evening, Kris from Go Veer, Go Home. So I think, I need to take the glass off. So I think what we're going to do then is I'm going to jump right into committing to where this is going to go based on the roadbed, and I'm going to start hacking this out and sort of narrating along as I do it. Because I don't enjoy this at all. Like, I don't like the track was laid, it runs beautifully. I run trains for hours with no problems, and now I'm going to take something that works really well and I'm going to smash it up a little bit and see if I can make something a bit bigger, or a bit better, I mean. And so I, ahead of time, figured out where I was going to be putting the top of the turnout here, which I've marked off here. And so I'm going to snip the rails here to start, and then after that cut's done, I'm going to go down to the bottom end and make sure that I have that exactly right. And one of the things that I find has worked well for me, because sometimes precision is a bit tough, is I mark up the rails with, in this case, just a Sharpie pen, sort of like when you're doing machining work. And then I use a ruler, and I score the top of the track with my ruler, so that now I've got a perfect little line. And so long as I can get my nippers to line up with that, it should be a pretty clean cut. I think I've mentioned this before, but I didn't know in the beginning. So first of all, the rail nippers are great. I think these are a company called Xuron or something like this, and I've had these for about 25 years. They cut track really well, and if you have them, you know that as well. The thing that I didn't know in the beginning is that you need to cut your track vertically, like that. Otherwise, when you cut it like this, it crushes the rail heads, and you have a bit more trouble with installing the rail joiners. So I've got this track marked. I know exactly where I need to make the cut, and I'm just going to commit to it now. And we're committed. We're moving forward with this. And so with that, I'm going to make sure that I see exactly where that turnout is going to join, and then I'm going to go through the same process of marking and cutting the rails at the other end. Okay, so that is marked, and I'm going to go in with the nippers on the other end and now make the final cuts to remove the track. All right, we're committed. And the one last little thing I have here is I do have one rail spike in here. And that's it. So hopefully, if I did that correctly, this is going to perfectly fit into that space. And I've done a good job there. That's a huge relief, because doing this live and getting it wrong certainly contribute to an unfavorable learning experience. I didn't think dad jokes were allowed in here. Oh no, this is a safe space for the middle age. What type of spacing do you use in N Scale for side by side? Okay, so that is a good question. And I could find no great answer to that. However, I do believe that when I was doing this, I was taking a look at the NMRA website to figure out what the appropriate track spacing was. And so on my main line, I am using 30 millimeter spacing between the center of the rails. And for my yard platforms, if I recall, I'm using 50, which means that in N scale, 1 millimeter is 6 inches, so the track spacing for my main line is 15 feet to center, and it is 25 feet to center for passenger platforms, which means there's roughly 20 feet of width for a passenger platform. And one of the things that I did a little while ago is that I 3D printed, let me see if you can see that, these little clips. And let me see if I've got a 30 handy in here. Yeah, I'll move it over to the project camera here. And what they do is that these clip on a pair of rails, like so. I don't know if you can see, that's hard to see. But what it does is it clips between the rails and then I can keep them all parallel. I do know that when I was watching Kris rebuild his layout, I think he actually took a block of wood and scored some saw marks on it, and that became a assembling spacing tool. He could just drop it onto the rails and keep them equidistantly spaced. So the next trick here is that I need to remove a few ties from each end of this cutout section. And I haven't found a way to do that that gives me a particular amount of confidence. I do have a tack in here. I probably should pull that out as well. So that's pretty free. And there's a tack back here. This one has got a feeder installed. Yeah, so I want to be careful with that because I don't want to knock off any of the soldered joints. And so one of the better ways I found to do this is to actually get the X-Acto blade under it and just put a bit of pressure down on the rail and make a cut. I'm sure there's better ways to do this, but this is the way that I found works well for me. And then, let me just grab a second pair of pliers here. With that score in place, I can then sort of slide off the remaining ties. Just knock out this last little bit. One more little cut. There. So that is the first pair off, with very minimal damage. Actually, that looks pretty clean. I run games separating the ties that bind. Oh, we're in full force tonight. So I'm going to knock out. This one's going to be really tricky. Because of course all of the wiring, I tried to do a very neat job on the underside of the layout, which means that it's quite tight and bound up. I can loosen it off, but I don't want to cause any problems. All right. Okay. So far, so good. Let's make sure that that fits, and I think we're good to go. Now, one of the next things I need to do is that I am using, so this is Pico Code 55 track. I can't say enough good things about it. I really like it. People will explain that the tie spacing isn't exactly right for North American railroads. It doesn't bother me. I like the profile of it, and it is very solid, very rigid, and great to work with. It's a great product. And because of availability and in particular generosity and cost effectiveness, I used Pico Code 80 turnouts. So 55 track, 80 turnouts. And they are compatible. So the Code 55 track actually has two sets of flanges on the rails, and you connect the bottom flange to the Code 80, and it mates up perfectly. That said, it's difficult to see, but the profile height of the turnout is different than the track, which means that if I was to install this as is, it's going to be elevated. And so one of my very first times doing this stream is that I created little adhesive roadbed pieces, and this is using 1mm cork laminated to create the proper profile. So regular cork roadbed for N scale is 3mm tall. This is about 2mm tall, or 1.5 millimeters. And so what I need to do is excavate the roadbed here so that I can install this little guy. And so I need to cut out any of this. I need to trim this a little bit and then cut out the rest. So let me grab some scissors. And that's going to fit down perfectly. Okay. So the next part then is removing the roadbed and inserting this little piece of cork. And I put this all down with liquid nails. However, if you use Code 55 microengineering track, you have to cut and file off the second rail base from Pico. Ah, okay, so they're not compatible. Trackside, my Pico is great to my eyes. Yeah, I'm very relaxed about any of this. I have enjoyed, I said early on when I started talking about things that we did here, I originally had used Atlas track, and I have no problem with the Atlas track. The problem I did have with it was the turnouts were incredibly fragile. I had a lot of problems with them basically blowing apart, and it wasn't through neglect. You know, if you had a particular piece of rail and you had to sort of shove it into place, you could really damage the turnouts. And the Pico are far more robust in my mind, and they're also sprung turnouts, so I don't need to use any sort of switch machines or ground throws. I can just throw the turnout by hand, and that suits me well. One of the topics that I sort of leaned into a little bit when I started this new project was trying to be very analog about everything that I'm working on. I had done, you know, my fair share of Arduino and all sort of like control systems and such, and it just meant that there was more things to sort of mess up. All right, one of the things I think I'm going to do is I'm going to grab, I use liquid nails for this, and this is, or weld bond. I'm just going to quickly grab a chisel to sort of knock this off. So entertain yourself. I use Kato because my layout is small and I like the track performance. There is no hardship about using Kato, or Kato, pardon me. It is a great product. So off camera here, I need to go grab myself a chisel because this was far more, I did a All right. And I have a series of chisels that, this is a really small one, I have a series of chisels that I use for things that are like cutting bolts and knocking holes in concrete. So these are not, you know, my father's woodworking chisels. These are my utility chisels that I use for exactly this stuff, which is mucking about. Man down. We'll call 911, you number in case of emergency. Emerald satisfying, yes. I realize it's a bit of a long angle to see any of this. But let's get, this is almost all cleaned out. Okay, I think that puts us in good shape. Let's see if I can't get a bit of a paintbrush here. Okay, and I'm going to do one last little bit, which is I'm going to use an emery board to give this one little final sand out. Okay, I think that puts me in pretty good shape now. We're running a fast clock here tonight, so the maintenance crew has been in, I'm going to say, for about 2 hours, and they've successfully removed the piece of rail. N Scale Train Boy, I am at the point where I've gotten so frustrated with my track work that I'm considering ripping it all out and replacing it entirely, putting in a whole new sub-road bed, but leaving the layout the same. You know what, I can appreciate that. I think I was watching maybe one of your most recent live streams, is that possible? And you were doing, you were rolling a D20 and doing some operations. And I could see that there was moments where it didn't work out so well. Good evening, Mr. Exotic Viper. Okay, so I just peeled the backing off this. It is a self-adhesive cork. If you haven't seen this before, let me see if I can. I get this on Amazon. It comes in a pack of like 12. I don't even think it's $12. It's 8 by 11, which is a bit of a strange size. It is roughly 1 millimeter thick with an adhesive backing on it. And I just laminate 2 pieces together. I trace the turnout, I cut it out, and that is my piece of customized road bed. I have many packs of this because I'm going to use it for paving to create all my roads, and then use laser cut wood for my curbing. And so, because it's also 1 millimeter thick, it's great for shimming and such. Again, Amazon, I don't know what it's called, but it's 1 millimeter thick self-adhesive cork. I think people use it for like the bottom of mugs and cups and stuff. Okay, so let's get this committed. Okay, I got this glue. Okay. So we're in good shape so far. And so this should now fit really well. Yes, perfect. It's the right height now. The rail heads all meet up. Again, a bit hard to see from where you're coming from. I've tried everything I can think of short of replacing the track wholesale, from powering frogs to modifying the track plan, but I just can't get it to, I cannot get it to run well. N Scale Train Boy. Monday night was, I think, my last straw. I watched your stream. Thank you for streaming. I could sense a bit of the frustration, as it just didn't feel like they wanted to cooperate with you at all. Okay, so I now need to add the rail joiners to both ends of this turnout. And one of the things that I've come to learn is that the rail joiners are incredibly tight. And I have more than once, in an attempt to put a rail joiner on, run it up under my fingernail. And that'll wake you up, to say the least. And then you've got a swollen, dead finger that doesn't work very well. And so these are very similar to the way that they do the HO scale ones, exactly the same. I think these are actually Atlas. It's whatever was in stock. I've tried to use Pico in the past. Microengineering is good too. It's whatever they have at the shop, because, oh, and that one's gone forever. Because they do get out of stock very quickly. All right, so I've got 4 rail joiners, or fish plates. And I made this little tool up, this pathetic little duct tape wrap piece of tool. And what it is that it's an extended piece of rail, just out like that, and I have filed it to a point. And what it allows me to do is it allows me to force the rail onto the rail joiners so that I can open them up a little bit, and they're a lot easier to attach to the actual turnout. And so you get it sort of started on, and it's super tight, and then you just give it a bit of pressure. And you do it both ways. It's that much to get these loosened up. And so now that should much more easily go on. Yep. And I'm going to trim a little bit of it so it's a little snugger. I can use my different nips. A rail joiner is worse to step on than Lego. I'm fortunate that in this space, I'm in a basement, in an old house, which means that most of the basement, as I said before, is very much like a Blair Witch project, sort of terrifying, but this one room has carpet in it. And the carpet is one of those carpets that is sort of oatmeal-y, sort of mottled, and what you will find is that when you drop the rail joiner, you will never find it again until you're in your sock feet, and you will immediately find it, and it hurts. Like, this is my worst, this is one of my least favorite things. And the other thing is that rail joiners are wild expensive. You know, I've gone through dozens of packs, and they're all about $8 for like 20 joiners. Yeah, just as it was mentioned, this tool, it's literally a piece of track. You can see I'm bleeding. It's literally a piece of track that I've wrapped with duct tape and then sharpened the one end. And I think I'm going to knock off one tie off of this turnout. track nails or individual strands are bad too. Oh, I have an entire package of foot pain here that I'm going to use. And I'm realizing that I'm going to have to trim this tie off as well. This was actually a used turnout, and I'm realizing it was a little bit shortened, which is fine. But I just have to make a little bit of space by removing some of the ties. That's good. That one's not been loosened up yet. Perfect, and the last one. But also I didn't loosen that one up either. All right, so rail joiners are on, cork road bed is down. It's a good fit. Now I need to just sort of snug that turnout back into the rail. Let's see what we got going on here. This is why I wear slippers constantly. Max, yes, I do as well, but sometimes you run downstairs. I considered making a crush rolling jig to make my own track lengths and experiment with more conductive materials. Oh, wow. Good evening, August. Mainline modeler, hey gang, I just dropped in for a bit. Hey, thanks for joining us. Steam Wizard. This is reminding why I gave up everything when was scale roading. Hello, August. Okay, so because I'm going to do this in a way that'll probably stress people out, but there is a bit of give to this, and so I'm going to basically bend the rail vertically in order to get the rail joiners on, and I've got just a touch of something here I have to sort of take out. Okay, so I should be able to just slide these on because I did open them up. So they are seated, but I got to give them a bit of a push. All right, so far so good. Those are basically into the right place. And now I'm just going to make everything bend to my will at this point. Okay, so those are all seated in, and it probably looks, oh, you can't really see that it's all warpy. Todd Armstrong, Denny, your Go trains look awesome. I love the overpass. Your vision for your basement empire is really taking shape. Thanks for sharing. Thank you very much, Todd. I will remind everyone this is version 2. Version 1 was also the empire I thought it was going to be, and there were some definite learnings on that one. Okay, so that's in there, and before I go any further, I want to get these tracks properly aligned, and this is where my little collection of these spacers come in rather handy. And I hope I have enough left. Oh yeah, here we go. So I put these on. Just to make sure that I've kept the alignment. So the most outside rail is still permanently tacked. I got one more. One more. All right, so you can, so I'm not sure if it's quite that visible to you, but see what I've done is then I've put those spacers down the entire length, which means that these rails should be exactly 30 millimeters parallel on center. I'm going to do the classic down the rail look. Pardon me for bumping the microphone. And it looks good. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start tacking it down. And again, I'm using tacks. So I do have a really small jeweler's drill, I guess you would call it. This was really inexpensive. This is a very poorly made little hand vise. I didn't pay a lot of money for it, and it has served me very well. If you wanted to do more precise, more consistent modeling, I wouldn't suggest this one. But for what I'm doing, just pinning down track, it works great. So I want to make sure that I get the turnout secured first. And so this is just a matter of just putting a little bit of pressure on the rail, and it's going to pierce and it'll suddenly drop through. Like so. And then I found you got to give the sub-road bed some love as well. And so these little wire nails I have. This was something during the pandemic that went out of stock very quickly, and I had to search all over the place for them. All right, so in goes one of the little wire nails, and I bend about 30% of these. I have a very small antique tack hammer that was a gift years ago, and it happens to be the perfect hammer to install these things. So one last check. Looks good. Little taps to get it committed, and I pulled it right out. Let's try again. And then a nail set till it's snug. Don't hammer it down till it pinches the rail. Perfect, just like that. I'll go back in and I'll reinstall the pin that was from down at this end. And I'm also going to pin the turnout itself. Off camera, I've almost just spilt the entire bag. N Scale Train Boy. Denny, what do you use as sub-road bed, if anything? I see the cork, but is this on your baseboard, or do you have another layer under the cork? No. So, for this version of the layout, just start to finish, what I did was I used 3/4 inch good one side fir plywood to build up the cookie cutter sort of frame, or the open grid, or the L girder benchwork, whatever you want to call it. And then I have no sub-road bed, so to speak. For flat areas, it's 1/2 inch fir plywood, but for all the elevations, it becomes a sub-road bed because I build in the elevations. I used fir plywood because it is more water resistant. It's not waterproof, it's more water resistant, and is incredibly strong relative to any sorts of other wood. So it's elevated, so directly into plywood, the baseboard, and then just the 3mm cork, and that's it. Which means the track spikes really hold well. Okay, another check. Looks good. Again, pardon me for bumping the mic. And I'm going to put, there's already a hole here, I'm going to put one more pin here. Now, with the turnouts, I have found that I do like soldering the turnouts to the rail, and after this stream is done, I'll go in and just add a bit of solder to the 5 joints that I've done, but I leave the individual rails unsoldered. I find that it helps secure the turnout in place. Okay, so by rights, the main line is now open. So I can take all of these rail spacers off. And I know that I can feel that this has got some edges to it. I'm going to knock that down a little bit with a jeweler's file just to make sure it's a smoother transition. And then again, off stream, I will buff the rail heads up so that they're shiny again. Because it's my understanding that rough rail heads, like the file creates, corrode or oxidize a lot quicker. And so I'll come back in here with some 1000 grit and just get them cleaned up so that they're nice and shiny and polished. I think that is good enough for now, and I'll just okay. That looks like it's pretty good. What was okay? Did you say 30 centimeters? So mainline modeler, yeah, 30 millimeters on the mainline, which I think is pretty close to what the NMRA standard suggests. It's 50 millimeters between platform tracks. More sidings mean more trains, absolutely. Trackside Mike, do you paint your track? Yes, I will be. I haven't painted it yet. Nothing is ballasted. So one of the projects I've been working on that I don't know if you can necessarily see, let's see, can the project camera see it? So up here, I have been working on painting up my passenger platforms. There, I poked it up there. They have been primed, and now I'm going to go in for the process and dab all the different concrete colors on. Before I can install those, I need to paint all that rail, and I will paint it all for the yard area. It's almost somewhere between black and a burnt umber color. I spent way too much time last time I visited Union Station taking pictures of the sides of railheads. And then what I'm going to do is I will come in from an angle with my airbrush, and I'll make sure the sides of the rails are all painted. I'm going to come down from the top and do some different grays and sort of tan overcoats, and then it will be ballasted with black ballast, which is very typical of Union Station. And then, you know, I'll have that all done. So yes, then what I'll start doing is moving my way around the layout and doing sections at a time for rail painting, tie painting, and then ballasting. I don't love doing it, and the reason I haven't done it yet is because I wanted to make sure that everything was running and try to get through a season. We are actually coming up to almost a year ago that I ripped out the layout and started this one, and so we're going to see how it does, and if I can get through basically into October and everything continues to run well, then I can sort of commit to gluing the track down with the ballast. So this is all cleaned up. Let's see. The main line is open again. And so let's see how everything moves along here. So I still need to work a little bit on the bump there, but for the most part, it works well. I will polish my track using an oil stone. Okay, very good. Yes, rough rail creates micro arcs, which makes the rail dirtier. So you can see it's got a little bit going back and forth. I'm not going to bother with that tonight. I'll get that all cleaned up and running well. But there you go. Main line is back open for traffic. So that part is a success. So then the last thing we need to do is get this piece of rail. So it's difficult to see, but where I'm going to lay the paintbrush, that is the end of the stub end siding, and this was the original bumper. And so I need to connect from here to the end of that paintbrush. And so as I was sort of talking about before about Pico rail, the Code 55 is incredibly rigid. If you have worked in N Scale and you've used the Atlas rail, if you do this, it will wobble. But the Pico is actually quite stiff, and it holds its shape really well. So you can contour a little more easily because it'll keep itself in true. And so because I've done this outside rail, it means that I can start massaging this around the corner and get it to a point that it overlays where I need it to go. Okay. And I need to just pull this pin here. And I can use the rail on top of the other one to do the nipping. If you want to have your layout seem like Union Station, you need to spray some eau de creosote on the tracks. Dirty, gritty smell. I was fortunate enough to go to a Blue Jays game this past weekend. My father and I went down. I took him out for his birthday. We had really nice box seats, and so we always take the train in. And there's a skywalk that you get off Union Station, you go up and down a little bit, and then you cross over the tracks to make your way to the Rogers Center or the Sky Dome. It's a great entertainment center. They've got the CN Tower, Scotiabank Arena and such, so it's a great little center. And as you're crossing over the yard, one of the reasons that I like these yards is it is a disaster. It looks like a yard sale. There is junk and equipment and rails and ties. Like you're one step away from like burning barrels and tents. They are some of the ugliest pieces of track work I've ever seen. And then I've got people like, Pat, who sends me videos. I think he's in the States near New York, I think, and these beautifully manicured yards. Union Station is not a beautifully manicured yard. It is a dog's breakfast yard sale for sure. All right. August, are you using Pico turnouts? So yeah, yes, Pico turnouts. I said a little earlier, the turnouts are code 80 and the track is code 55. So I can just actually take the nippers and line them up against the other railhead. Oh, that's good. I almost did it the wrong way. Ho ho. Man, there was almost disaster tonight. So I'm going to use my X-Acto knife to mark my cuts. I almost did it backwards and squashed the rail. So I'm going to just quickly rough cut that, and I need to knock some ties off. Okay, ties are off, and now I need to cut the rail from the right side. So that looks good. I'm going to actually just, the bit here is a bit rough. And I will run a magnet over this area when I'm done. Just to get all those filings sort of picked up. Okay. All right, so now I need to cut down a few more blades, my rail joiners. Let's see what's going on in the chat here. Are you planning on modeling the mainline modeler? Are you planning on modeling the James Street Tower? There is the James Street Tower and there's a second one, and I am thinking about trying to include them. So halfway down the layout, I'm going to put in the Bathurst Bridge. I'm going to call it the Bathurst Bridge for the time being. And I'm not sure if it's Bathurst or one of the other streets where they have towers, the old towers are hidden under the bridge. And so I would like to try to scratch build one of the towers, and I would like to place it under the bridge. Alternatively, I could put it along the side of the yard here, sort of in a less prototypical spot, but I really would like to model those. And I do have really handy a bunch of DPM kits that I got, the brick structures that would be perfect to sort of kit bash into those towers. The DPM kits aren't all that era appropriate for the layout I want to build, which really starts like in the late 60s and 70s till present. So it's all sort of that brutalist concrete architecture. But these little kits would be perfect for, you know, scratch building a tower. They may not look exactly right, but I would, at the very least, sort of like label them correctly. Have you noticed that the track and platforms Union Station are quite bendy? There is a lot going on, and they're adding new platform tracks as we speak. I was down there, and it's a real mess. The second thing is that you definitely sway side to side as you come in and arrive at the platforms. There's a couple places when we were riding along, because my father is less familiar with it. He was like, "Are we going to tip over here?" And I said, "No, no, this is par for the course." They just like the lateral movement. Thank you, Mark. Have a great night. Looking forward to your next update. I saw your I wallpapered my layout room episode. I'm looking forward to the next episode of, you know, I added a carpet or whatever you're doing next. I run games. It's kind of like an amusement park ride. It's sort of like when you're on a roller coaster and it's coming into the end and it's banging you all over the place. It's sort of like that. Okay. So I've opened up the rail joiners with my little stretchy tool. And I will just sort of flex this into place. Okay. And so this is where I'm using 50-inch centers for the passenger platforms, and I know that is still applicable here. So I can then add these in to keep everything parallel. Let's see if I've got many more in here. So how does that look? Oop, pardon me for the microphone. I think that looks great like that. I took the Paul Stamp's Finger Lake Railway. I took the Going to the Blue Jays game a couple years ago, and definitely the best way to train, despite the brake whiplash. You know what? You know, because, of course, because, you know, I live close to Toronto. I'm an hour outside of Toronto, about 70 or 80 kilometers away. It's easy to be hard on it, but it is a fairly impressive transportation hub, and it is great for getting into the city. I know that myself and my kids, rather than drive in, so first of all, let's be clear, I won't drive into Toronto. It is taking your life in your own hands. I drive to Aldershot, drop the car off for free. On a weekend, it's $10 round trip to take the GO train, unlimited stops into the city and all the way back. Same on long weekends. For $10 to travel hundreds of kilometers and go all the way back and forth, you know, from Hamilton all the way out to the other end, near Oshawa, you can take the train for $10. It is a really superior way to do things, and if you have a Presto card, you can transfer immediately onto the TTC. So I'm really happy with it. I know it's easy to complain about these things, but it is decent. All right, I want to get these sort of pinned down then, so I can reinsert one of the track pins on the top end here, where it used to be. I'll set that in a bit. I will, where did I put my pin vise? Do. Oh, right there. Okay, doing well. I think I will add a pin right about there and then one in the curve, and that'll be in. When I started laying this track at the beginning, oh right, this is styrofoam. Okay. this is going to complicate this a little bit, isn't it? Yeah, so that is effectively not useful at all. There's still wood over here, so I'll put one last tack in here, and I'm going to have to come back and I'll need to flood that with some glue. When I first started doing this, I thought the idea about drilling every nail hole, I'm like, I can't believe I'm choosing to do this. I have found this process to be really relaxing and actually adds to a much more enjoyable pacing for doing the track work. You know, when I was putting the main line together, I would come down and do 2 or 3 sections and call it a night. And that actually worked out really well for me. It was the perfect amount because I couldn't rush. I'm really prone to getting ahead of myself. Tack that in, and I get a bit sloppy. All right. So I'm going to pull those up for now. So I will need to, oops. So I will need to come back in and glue down this piece of track. I need to decide how I want to do that. These are, I can't lose any of these rail joiners. Oh, there's thousands of dollars of rail joiners here spread onto the track. Okay. So then I suppose the last test is to see if the train will navigate the turnout. Yeah, a little bit of a bump there. I'll take care of that later. And let's see how we do here. Now this track is likely not powered right now. And there we go. I'm going to call that a successful surgery. And that puts it at 9:02. So that was exactly 1 hour to install that new turnout. Maxris, have a good night. Thank you for joining us. What else we have here? Is the curve freehand or did you use specific radius or pattern to set the cork and the curve? Mac Irvine. No, I didn't use a specific radius. Let me see if I can explain this. So, with the tracks being parallel by 50 millimeters, what I did was that I knew that I needed that rail to gently curve over the course of 14 inches, so millimeters to inches, which means that from a 14-inch width, I need that track to come up and then get parallel with the 50 millimeter width between the tracks. And the cork is resilient enough and pliable enough that as you sort of move it into place, it will naturally form a nice eased curve. And so that was the way that I did it. I didn't do anything specific. The minimum radius on this layout for N Scale is about, it is 20 inches is the minimum radius and 24 is the preferred radius. So this is well broader than that, so it shouldn't be much of a problem. But no, it's done by eye more than anything else. I just wanted to have a nice easement to it. I don't lose my rail joiners, they clip onto the Kato track. Listen here. The last time I took maple leaf to Aldershot, you'd say, cheap like borscht. Steve Wizard, wow, Roundhouse Park in there, Toronto looks really cool. Yeah, that, the roundhouse that you see there is by the Steam Whistle Brewery. And that was that was in operations well into the 80s, or that yard existed into the 80s until they took that apart in order to install, at the time, the Sky Dome and basically build it into a sports entertainment hub. All right. That's working well. When I lay tracks, sometimes I use small pieces of double-sided 3M tape just to hold the track down temporarily, mainline modeler. Yeah. Yeah, the one thing that I have done, like the double-sided tape, is I use really extra thin super glue, and so you can just hold the track in place and put one little drop, and it's enough to keep it in place for the time being. I have tried super gluing track in the past. I wouldn't ever do that again. There are some problems with it. Mainly, that's forever. If you want to use, you know, some liquid nails or some white glue, you can sometimes salvage your track. When you use super glue, you are committed for life. That track is no longer going to be moving. Okay, let's get, in the meantime, let's get my maple leaf running as well here. You should try to get all this weekend, 21st N Scale weekend. The weekend of the 20th and the 21st. I don't think that's going to realistically happen, but I do appreciate that offer. There's much touring that I need to do. You know, apparently I'm trying to find a way to make Springfield happen this coming fall. Or not the fall, you know. Kris May, heading out. Have a great night all. Thank you very much, Kris. Thanks for dropping in. I think I'll wait for this GO train to make its way around. It's highballing now. I think GO Transit is a top operating speed along the main line of something like 90 kilometers an hour. Well, there we go. Well, you know what? That went quicker than I thought. All in all, I think it was probably 50 minutes to get that surgery done. As I said, I still have some work to do. I'm going to go in and I'm going to make sure that the track is just so. I need to glue down a little bit of this area here, and I am going to solder the rails, the turnout to the rails, because I do prefer that, but I'm going to leave all of the mainline track just friction joints. I'm not going to solder any of that. And so, you know, I think, all told, this is probably a great place for me to sort of stop for the night. I will fuss for hours. I'm going to pull out the shop vac and get this all cleaned up. I'll polish those rails up. And so before the night's over, this will be running as I want it to. So, you know what? I appreciate people like spending a bit of their time on a Thursday night to join me. You know, as said in previous streams, this is part of every Thursday. There's a group of us that try to do something entertaining as part of the Third Rail Thursday. The first Thursday of every month is me. The second Thursday is Kris from Go Via or Go Home. The third Thursday is Mark from M&M Rails. And then the last Thursday of every month is something called GVO After Dark, when Kris and any assorted number of people get together and talk shop. And that said, with that, there is also someone streaming literally every night of the week. You can take a look at Dundas Junction and Trackside Mike. There's Scott Rails and Indian, I forget what, is it Head River? There is Train Boy. There is Paul Stamp. Like, one of the things that I'm really coming to love is that I just queue up all of the live streams and just watch them constantly. It's like having all of your friends hanging out with you in the layout room, if you're fortunate enough to have somewhere like a laptop or a television to watch. And so I do encourage you to hang out, to make your way around the virtual space and check out anyone and everyone who's streaming, because it is really comforting to find so many different people just sharing what they're up to and their own techniques and their own approaches to stuff. And also just to see all different sorts of progress. But with that, you know, I've reached a good stopping point. The trains are running really well right now. A couple tweaks there. I hope everyone has a great night. Thanks for stopping by. And you know what? I'll see you next time.